On a rainy spring morning in 2016, a group of fitness enthusiasts arrived at their usual class meeting spot, a local church parking lot in Midlothian, Texas. But on this particular day, something was off. They saw their coach, Missy Bevers' truck, parked outside with the doors open and with the keys sitting on the tailgate. Some of her belongings were near the entrance of the church, indicating that she had been preparing for the group's workout. The stormy weather had forced them to take their class inside, but Missy was nowhere to be found. As they searched the church for her, they stumbled across a scene straight out of a horror movie. They found Missy lying lifeless in a pool of blood and broken glass, leaving the group in shock and disbelief. When police arrived on the scene, they desperately tried to identify who else had been in the church that morning. The surveillance footage that was uncovered only added to the mystery, revealing a figure in full tactical gear roaming the church halls before Missy's death. Soon, the tight-knit community, the police, and most of all, Missy's family were desperate to figure out who could have done this to Missy and why. Hey guys, I'm Elise. This is 10 to Life. Let's jump right in. Okay, recently my husband and I went on a weekend getaway and he was laughing at me hysterically because I brought 3 different perfumes with me for a 3-day trip. Now, let me just say, I know I might be a little neurotic, but I explained to him that my scent needs to match my activity, kind of like an outfit. I wouldn't wear a ball gown to the beach, so why would I wear like a cotton candy perfume to an opera? Which, okay, maybe that's not the best analogy, but you get what I'm saying. I like to smell like what I'm doing. Clean linens, maybe sandalwood, something fresh for a fun beach day, or something more strong and floral and more serious for a date night out. And luckily, the service that helps me do that is also today's sponsor. Scentbird is a fragrance subscription service with tons of different perfumes and clones available, like hundreds of them. They let you choose a new designer fragrance to try every single month for just $17. And it isn't just some random fragrances that they send you and they hope that you like them. You get to pick what you want every single month, so there are no surprises. They have luxury designer brands like Prada and Gucci, and also classic brands like Clinique and Juicy Couture, and you can choose whichever ones you want. Now here is what is a game changer for me. With each fragrance, you get a 30-day supply, so you can try it out before committing to an actual full-size bottle that sometimes can cost over $150, sometimes even like $300 to $500 depending on the brand. So it totally takes the risk out of it if you're not vibing with the scent, or you just want to continuously change it up like me and get these 30-day supplies. Now anyways, let me show you guys what I picked this month. First, I got Mar Remember When, which is more of like a dress to impress kind of scent. It has beautiful notes of jasmine and amber, and then I also snagged Mind Games by Jadobe, or Jadobe, however you would say it. I don't know. I'm not French, guys. But this one has like these beautiful hints of like vintage leather, pomegranate, and rose. And look, I know this is a really weird description, but it smells like a scent that I would want to wear when I'm like inside a moody study, or playing chess, or something like very like established like that, which, you know, I get it, I'm an odd duck. But anyways, I snagged each of them for just $17. But even better, if you use my coupon code Elise, you will get 55% off your first month, making it just a little over $7 a month. Scentbird is available in the USA and Canada. And can we also just take like a quick moment here to appreciate this sleek case that it comes in? Bam, it fits inside your bag wherever you're going. And this is a 30-day supply right here. So snag this deal while it lasts, grab your fragrances, and start living your best smelling life. Remember, that is code Elise for 55% off. 45-year-old Terry Leanne Strickland, who had always gone by Missy, was born on August 9th, 1970. She was born to parents James and Norma Strickland. She was born in Graham, Texas, but Missy, her older brother Clifford, and their younger brother Clint grew up in a city called Jacksboro. As a child, Missy was said to be super outgoing, just a great, fun little girl who always had a lot of friends. She was friendly, kind, and very popular by the time that she graduated from Jacksboro High School in 1988. From there, she attended Tarleton State University, where she received a Bachelor of Science degree. After college, Missy was working in retail when she met a woman named Marcia, who was her coworker at a Bell's department store. Marcia has said that Missy was beautiful and seemed very down to earth and thought that she might have made a good match for her oldest son, Brandon. Brandon worked for his family business, which was a fuel distribution company. Marcia gave Missy Brandon's number and they arranged to have a lunch date during one of her breaks at work. Marcia has said that after their first date, her son was absolutely smitten with Missy. Brandon knew from then on that he wanted to be with her, and apparently, Missy felt the same way. Only 9 months later, the two of them married on June 20th, 1998, and afterward, they took a romantic Alaskan cruise for their honeymoon. The newlyweds bought a home in the town of Red Oak, which is a city in Ellis County, Texas. It's about 30 minutes away from Dallas and is considered one of the best places to live in Texas. It's said to have a small town feel, but is just close enough to enjoy the city life as well. So after they settled into married life, Missy decided she was going to go back to school. She wanted to get a teaching certificate for special education. She taught special needs students for 2 years before Brandon and Missy had their first child, a daughter named Hannah, in 2001. Soon after, they had their second daughter, Allie, in 2003, and later a third named Sarah in 2007. Missy decided to leave teaching so that she could be a stay-at-home mom. During this time, she worked part-time selling products for a skincare company and a jeans company called Vault Jeans. She did this to just earn a little bit of extra money for the family. They attended a church called the Cowboy Church, and Missy was said to be very spiritual and have a very close relationship with God. While she was busy with the girls, Missy also became seriously into fitness and getting back into shape after her 3 pregnancies. She realized how difficult it was to balance 3 children and a serious diet and workout regimen. She couldn't imagine how difficult it must have been for some women who wanted to get back in shape after having children while also working full-time. So when her youngest daughter started 2nd grade, Missy decided to commit herself to helping women just like her, women who were struggling to balance family life and fitness. During her own fitness journey, Missy took classes from an organization called Camp Gladiator, which is an award-winning, rigorous fitness program taught primarily outside by trained coaches and instructors. She decided to take some general classes to become a certified personal trainer, and she began holding classes at a local gym called Anytime Fitness. About 3 months later, she decided that if she became a Camp Gladiator instructor, she could help even more people achieve their fitness goals. She attended a 5-week instructor training event, and in 2015, she officially became a certified Camp Gladiator instructor, and she quickly started gaining clients who she had helped coach at the Anytime Fitness gym and who had seen the results that she gained from attending the classes as well. Camp Gladiator classes are typically always held outside, as I mentioned, in large fields or in parking lots, with a lot of flat space for people to really just spread out. Empty church parking lots are typically an ideal and safe place to do that, and only a few miles away from Missy's Cowboy Church was a church called Creekside Church of Christ, and it was in the neighboring city. This church was a better fit for the Camp Gladiator program because there was a large covered awning where the group could move under to do their workout if it rained. They were even given permission to go inside of the church if the weather was really bad. The Creekside Church of Christ facility wasn't your typical church building, though, with a steeple, stained glass windows, and ornate decorations. It's been said that the Church of Christ congregation doesn't really consider their place of gathering as sacred, but that the congregation in itself has the presence of God, rather than just a building. Other denominations do consider their churches sacred, But the Creekside Church of God was more of just a functional building, with their services being held in what they called an auditorium, whereas some churches refer to those rooms as sanctuaries. So the building could technically be used for a lot of different things, and they felt good about letting a group in the community use their facility to do something positive, like work on their health and fitness. Camp Gladiator was known for never canceling their classes, even in bad weather. If there was just a little rain, they would still do their workouts outside. But if the weather was ever really bad, they would try to find somewhere else covered to do it, but never cancel the class. On April 17th, 2016, it had been raining all night, but Missy made a post on Facebook that she was still going to hold her class no matter what. She posted that she had to be up bright and early, which is an understatement. She had to be up around 3:30 a.m. so that she could make it to the church by 4:30 a.m. Typically, the morning Camp Gladiator sessions would start at 5 a.m. sharp, but there were a couple of people who needed to start earlier due to their work schedule, and Missy was so dedicated to her students that she made accommodations like that, and she would host early birds before the official session began. On Monday, April 18th, Missy's husband Brandon was out of town on an annual trip to Biloxi, Mississippi for a fishing trip. His mom was supposed to go and be with the girls that morning, who would be asleep until Missy got back from her 2 sessions that day. But the weather had gotten so bad that she wasn't able to make it. Missy decided that the girls, who were 8, 13, and 15 years old at the time, would be fine and would probably not even wake up until she got home to get them ready for school. Brandon was always a little worried about Missy being alone in parking lots, especially so early in the morning, and he decided to get her a gun for protection a few weeks prior to the workout session that was meant to take place on Monday, April 18th. Some of her students, or campers as they're referred to in the program, have said that while they were working out outside, Missy would keep the gun hidden under an orange cone just in case she needed it. So Missy drove through the rain that morning to get to Creekside, and she pulled into the parking lot at around 4:15 a.m. She started unloading things from her truck, like extra yoga mats, small hand weights, and she also had a table that she would set up for new campers to sign in at and to register. She set her keys on the tailgate of her truck while she made a trip into the church, since she obviously wouldn't have been able to get everything in just one trip. Even though classes weren't typically held inside, she would still usually go inside the church and turn on the lights in case any of the campers needed to use the restroom or to get changed or even fill up their water. So at 4:18 a.m., Missy walked into the church to begin turning on the lights, and she heard a noise coming from down the main hall and decided to go see what it was. At 4:35 a.m., a new early bird camper had arrived in the parking lot for class. As the new guy, he wanted to make sure that he got signed in and registered early, but the rain caused him to be a few minutes late. He saw Missy's truck and the keys on the tailgate, and he figured that she was inside, so he decided to go try and look for her and say hi, but when he got to the door, it seemed to be locked. Since he was new, he didn't know how to open the door to the church because there was a little notch, like a deadbolt, that you needed to turn. So he tried to call Missy, but she didn't answer. So he went back to his car to wait for someone else to show up, or for Missy to come outside. At around 5 a.m., 2 other campers, who were a couple, arrived at the Creekside parking lot. The 3 campers said hi to each other under the awning, and then they decided to go in to see what Missy was doing. The couple knew how to open the door, and they walked inside and were startled by what they saw. There seemed to be broken glass throughout the halls inside the church, and they called Missy's name but got no response. After just a few minutes, one of the campers walked into a room and found Missy lying in a pool of blood with broken glass all around her. It appeared that she had a significant head wound and wounds all over her chest. They all completely panicked, and 2 of them dialed 911 to try to get help there as fast as possible. While the police were on their way, the wife of the couple called Brandon to tell him that Missy was in an accident and that he needed to come to the church right away. Brandon thought that the woman meant that Missy was in a car accident, and he told her that he was in Mississippi and that he couldn't just come right there. The woman didn't know what to say, so she hung up the phone so that Brandon could call his mom to tell her what was going on. The camper's husband called him back and was the one that broke the news to him that Missy was no longer alive and that he needed to get on a flight immediately. Soon, the police, fire department, and ambulances arrived at the scene and began what would turn into a much more complex investigation than they ever could have imagined. From Mississippi, Brandon was scrambling to get an early flight home, and he called his mom to tell her what was going on. His mom called and asked his sister to go over and be with his daughters until he could get home. She also had to make the call to Missy's mom to tell her that this was no normal accident and that Missy was dead. Brandon's sister, Missy's mom, and several other family members arrived at the family's home and woke up the girls. They sat in the living room and told the girls that something terrible had happened to their mother and that she wasn't going to be coming home. His sister remembers that the girls just started screaming and crying, and all they could do was hug and cling to each other in that moment. A few hours later, when Brandon got home, he ran in the house, and they all just held on to each other in heartbreak and confusion over what had happened.
She was angry. You saw every emotion come out of her in 5 seconds. You know, she said, "I can't live without my mother. I can't live without my mother." Was just bawling, crying. Was kind of in shock. She cried, she sniffed, she was kind of in shock. Didn't know how to respond, really. When he pulled up in the driveway and walked in the house, he just ran up to him and grabbed him. And, Missy's mom, and they just all grabbed each other and just clung to each other. The other family members, including myself and my parents, just surrounded them and just touched them and hugged on each other and just cried.
Her husband, Brandon Bevers, was not talking today. This was him sobbing at a vigil the day after her death.
At 6:55 a.m., the sun had just begun to rise when the police were already in full swing trying to figure out what happened to Missy. Investigators noticed that there were cameras on the outside and inside of the church, and before the scene was even fully processed, they wanted to get the footage to see who else was inside the church that morning. They felt like this was especially crucial because, as far as they knew, a killer was on the loose in their town. Even though not all of the cameras were functioning properly, they were able to capture some extremely bizarre footage from earlier that morning. The cameras captured someone breaking into the church at around 3:50 a.m., entering through the church's kitchen. There was actually some movement detected from one of the cameras even earlier than that, and it's been speculated that the intruder broke a window or tried to open a door so that they could run away and watch to see if there was an alarm or if police would show up. They saw the intruder roaming the halls of Creekside, carrying a hammer, a pry bar, wearing gloves, a helmet, a face mask, and dressed in full SWAT gear with the word police on the back. Very alarming, to say the least. Later that afternoon, the police held a press conference to inform the community about what had taken place at the church and to briefly show the suspect to see if anyone could identify them.
Good afternoon. My name is Carl Smith, and thanks for coming today. First of all, we want to offer our heartfelt condolences to the family and the victims. This is a tragic event for all involved, including our community. This morning at approximately 5 a.m., Midlothian officers and EMS were dispatched to an unresponsive person to the Creekside Church in the 5400 block of East Highway 287. Midlothian officers arrived at the location just after fire and department medics arrived on the scene, and the medics were attending an unresponsive female as officers entered the church. The officers observed a lot of broken glass on the floor, and the female, as well as the female. They started the search of the building to make sure there were no other individuals in the facility. During the search, the officers found evidence of forced entry into the building, indicating a possible burglary. The entire building was searched and nobody was found. After that, the victim was pronounced deceased by Ellis County Justice of the Peace Bill Woody. And officers at the scene located evidence, again, forced entry. The victim was identified as Terry Beaver, 45 years of age, from Midlothian, Texas. The victim was transported to Dallas County Medical Examiner's Office. During the course of the investigation, detectives located and collected the video evidence. The video depicts an unknown male walking inside the church building dressed in police-type clothing and wearing a helmet and gloves. We are releasing the video. I believe Commander Spann is going to let you guys know how to get that off of our YouTube channel. We are asking and soliciting any information regarding this offense or identity of any unknown male of the video. Asked to call Midlothian Police Department at 972-775-3333. The investigation is ongoing and further updates will be provided as additional information becomes available.
Later that day, they asked the public to pay very close attention to the strange way that the intruder was walking in the video. The intruder had a very pronounced and distinctive gait, or way of walking, with their feet pointed out to the sides, kind of like duck feet. With the footage, they estimated that the intruder was between 5 feet 2 inches and 5 feet 8 inches tall. The police believed that the intruder could have had a possible injury to their foot, or may have had a disability that caused them to walk that specific way. The intruder seemed to put their hand on the wall to steady themselves at one point, which caused some people to believe that they could have possibly been intoxicated. They looked to just be casually strolling through the church halls, using the hammer to break the glass panels of locked doors, but after further investigation, it didn't appear that the intruder stole anything. And the room with the most damage was the church office, and files were strewn about as if the intruder was looking for something in the filing cabinets. Due to the intruder not taking anything from the church, the police began to think that this must have been a targeted attack against Missy. But who would have wanted to kill her? They felt like the intruder was probably breaking glass to try to make it look like a burglary gone bad, especially since nothing was actually stolen. All of Missy's jewelry was still on her body, and she hadn't been taken advantage of in a sexual way, so nothing really made sense other than someone just simply wanting her dead. The police really didn't have too much experience with homicide cases, and the crime scene was released after less than 8 hours of processing. The next day, an autopsy was conducted on Missy, but the police remained very vague about her cause of death. They wanted to conceal the way that she actually died because they felt like that was a piece of information that only the killer would know. They told the public that Missy died of puncture wounds to the head and to the chest. However, after several interviews, press conferences, and articles, enough information has been pieced together to lead people to the conclusion that she died as a result of a gunshot wound, and also wounds sustained by the hammer that the intruder was carrying. The police were also able to come to the conclusion that Missy died after being in the church for less than 4 minutes, and many people think that this is because she was seen wearing a Fitbit, which would have been able to detect the exact time that her heart stopped beating. The police struggled to come up with a motive for someone wanting to kill Missy. As is typical with most murder investigations, they began by looking into the family, primarily Missy's husband Brandon, and his father, Randy. The detectives got search warrants for all of the family members' cell phones, and after looking into Missy and Brandon's history, it became apparent that there had been some hardships in their marriage, which most people would assume to be an obvious motive. It appeared that not only were Brandon and Missy having some financial issues, but Missy had also had at least one extramarital affair. After Brandon found out, in order to save their marriage, they attended couples counseling. It appeared that about 10 months prior to her death, they had recommitted themselves to their marriage on their 18th wedding anniversary, and things had been going well. They would frequently make loving posts about each other on Facebook and express their gratitude toward each other in text messages. However, investigators found messages, primarily on Missy's LinkedIn account, that led them to believe that she was still talking to other men. There were some messages from a guy that Missy told her friend she thought was creepy, but the conversations between her and one specific man seemed very comfortable and familiar, and they had even been planning on getting together soon. The police started to wonder if Brandon had found out about this and was angry. Even though he had a solid alibi and was seen and proven to have been in Mississippi, it wasn't out of the realm of possibility for him to have hired a hitman. There also was a possibility that the spouse of the person that Missy was cheating with or had cheated with in the past was out for revenge. At the time of Missy's death, Brandon's dad Randy and stepmom were on a road trip in their RV, and they were stopped in California. Regardless, during statements made by Brandon and Randy to the public, people felt like Randy had a similar stance and gait as the killer. Even though he had a solid alibi and his phone even pinged all the way over in California. But still, many people believed it was him because of their similar style of walking. But what would be his motive? Some people speculated that Randy disliked Missy for cheating on his son, and they didn't think that he or Brandon showed much emotion out in public or while talking about Missy. But that really isn't true. Both of them had been seen extremely upset in public.
Her husband, Brandon Bevers, was not talking today. This was him sobbing at a vigil the day after her death.
It kind of seemed like people were grasping at straws a bit to place the blame on one of them. However, another huge reason that people initially suspected Randy was because just days after Missy's death, workers at a dry cleaner's called the police to tell them that he had dropped off a shirt covered in blood, and it appeared that he had already tried to wash the blood off himself. Randy later said that after they found out what happened, he and his wife returned from their trip and were staying with their daughter, and his little chihuahua got into a fight with their bigger dog. He made a Facebook post and said that their dog ended up passing away. He told police that blood had gotten everywhere when they drove their dog to the vet hospital, but that the dog didn't make it. The police confiscated the shirt and tested the blood, and it in fact did turn out to be dog blood, which is absolutely heartbreaking to think about. Their daughter-in-law just died, everyone's traumatized, and then their sweet dog gets attacked and killed. Plus, you know Brandon's bigger dog was probably confused and upset by everything going on too, and maybe a little territorial with this new dog in its space. It's just all around a very sad situation. So after detectives thoroughly looked into both Brandon and Randy, they were both publicly cleared by law enforcement of having anything to do with Missy's death. So basically, the police had no clue where to go from there. However, just when it seemed like they were left with nothing to go on, some new evidence surfaced that could help them find the killer. About a mile down the road from the church is a gun store called SWFA Outdoors, which stands for Southwest Firearms. Only a few hours before the killer broke into the church, a suspicious car was captured on security cameras driving slowly around the SWFA parking lot. The car, which appears to be a Nissan Altima, spent 6 minutes in the parking lot, circling with their lights off, and then turning them off and on several times. Investigators have never been able to identify the driver of the vehicle, and due to the rain the day of the murder, the license plate isn't legible. However, it seems like too much of a coincidence that someone would be creeping around that parking lot so late at night, and then a murder happened only 1 mile away shortly after, especially when there wasn't anything else around either one of those two buildings. The police asked for the driver of the vehicle or anyone who knows who the car belongs to come forward so that they could at least rule out the driver as a suspect. The police also received a tip about someone potentially seeing a dark SUV leaving the church parking lot that morning, but they decided not to release that tip to the public because they didn't have any footage to corroborate the supposed sighting. They also received several tips about a man named Bobby Wayne Henry. As a former police officer, he worked as a licensed security guard at Missy's funeral and went to Mass at the Creekside Church of Christ. People at the funeral took notice of him because he walked with a limp, and they thought that he had a similar build to the killer. It was discovered that he had actually gotten suspended from the police force for a sexual charge back in 1996. He also drove a car that looked like the second vehicle that the police were interested in, and also admitted to still owning riot gear that didn't fit him anymore. The police asked a forensic podiatrist to compare Bobby's limp to the walk of the killer, but their findings were inconclusive. It also became clear that Bobby, who was over 6 feet tall, was much too tall to be the killer, and he was eventually cleared of any involvement as well. After several men had been looked into and cleared, people who analyzed the footage of the killer started to wonder, could the killer have possibly been a woman? In a few parts of the surveillance footage, people believed that many of the mannerisms of the killer appeared to be feminine. Some have even said that the killer looks similar to a pregnant woman in a few angles, but experts have said that the angle of the cameras make the killer look much larger than they actually are. That, and the amount of tactical gear, appears to add bulk to the person as well. There was also a moment where the killer attempted to open a locked door with a pry bar and kind of poked out their hip like a woman might do. Obviously, men and women can have stereotypical mannerisms of the opposite sex, but those are just observations that people have made when trying to determine who this person could possibly be. A user on the Websleuths website was able to use advanced software that takes into account a person's body measurements and clothing measurements down to the precise thickness of a garment, and it showed what the person would look like without clothing on. In this video that's popularly referred to as the Green Man video, you can see what the person's body may look like without all of that tactical gear on, and that they are probably actually much thinner than they appear on camera. Another suspect in this case was the wife of a trainer that Missy had taken a photo with during a Gladiators Camp conference the weekend before her death. Some have speculated that Missy and the male trainer could have been having an affair or hooked up at the conference, and that the wife may have wanted to get revenge by killing Missy. People online have even put together photos side by side of the woman with the killer, and while they do sort of look similar, when you consider how the person would look without all of that gear on, it seems much less likely. Also, it was never proven that Missy was having an affair with that trainer, and is probably just another example of finger pointing in the wrong direction. The mystery of what happened to Missy Bevers has captured the attention of so many people, including some of the best analytical minds in the true crime community. There have been creators who have viewed all of the surveillance videos for hundreds and hundreds of hours, trying to find any small detail that could possibly lead to more information about the killer. They have been able to capture still frames of the killer's side profile, which can give people a better idea of what kind of nose and general face shape that they may have, since their face is covered by that face mask in the majority of the footage. One creator named Aarin Stoner has meticulously gone through and enhanced thousands of photo and video frames, adjusting light and color settings to make anything that may have been missed in the footage more visible. Based on some of his enhanced images, he believes that the killer may actually have a prosthetic leg. This would explain the killer's walk, and he shows some frames where the killer's ankle appears to be very thin and could resemble the hardware on a prosthetic. However, others think that the images are just too low in resolution to say for certain. Aarin Stoner, as well as another creator named Webster, have both spent an extensive amount of time working to decipher what the numbers on the Nissan's license plate could be, and have even been able to send their findings to law enforcement to run through Texas license plate databases. Their work and dedication just shows how invested so many people have become in helping find Missy Bevers' killer, and their hours of in-depth footage and evidence analysis are definitely worth watching. So there are basically a couple of general theories that people have about what could have happened to Missy the day that she was killed. The first is that this was a targeted killing, and that someone specifically sought out Missy for an unknown reason. There are thoughts that it could be a man who was messaging her creepy things on LinkedIn, and she could have turned him down and made him angry. Some people think that Missy posting on Facebook where she was going to be that very next day and the exact time could have made it easy for the creepy LinkedIn guy or anyone who was potentially stalking her to arrive early and wait for her to get into the church. People who accept this theory point to the fact that the killer didn't end up taking anything, and that the injuries to her chest seemed to be more of a personal attack. They believe that the fact that this person had on all of that tactical gear points to them being prepared and going to great lengths to hide their identity. However, if you look up police tactical gear costumes, all of the items that the killer is wearing are easily available to buy online. I'm not sure that it would have taken someone a huge amount of planning to get those items. It could have also been an outfit that an average burglar would want to wear to conceal their identity, especially if they were on parole or something and didn't want to risk any cameras capturing their face. The other theory is that this was a burglary gone wrong, with someone who didn't expect anyone to be at the church and was caught in the act by Missy. To me, this theory does make the most sense. If someone was planning an attack on Missy, surely they would know that her husband was out of town if they had been stalking her Facebook to know where she was and where she was going to be and when. Her and Brandon had both posted about him being in Mississippi for a fishing trip. Why wouldn't they have just killed her at her house, or sat at the end of her street, which probably wouldn't have had many people around that early, and then just shot her then? Especially since this person had police tactical gear. They could have pretended to be a cop and pulled her over, or approached her car at the stop sign at the end of her street and shot her point blank. If it was planned, why risk going somewhere that has obvious cameras, and where other people were going to be showing up soon after Missy did? However, some don't believe that a burglar would be taking so much time moseying around the church. But at 3:30 in the morning on a Monday, a burglar would probably assume that nobody was going to be there until the afternoon at the earliest. Many churches are actually closed on Mondays. If this was just a random burglar, they wouldn't have had any way of knowing that a workout group was going to show up at 4 a.m. If they thought they had plenty of time, they would just slowly creep around and basically explore the place to see what they could find. This burglar could have also been looking for something. One thing, likely cash. Because on Sundays, churches collect offerings, donations, and other offerings from their congregations. On Creekside's website, they even posted that they averaged about $10,000 in offerings each week from the offering plate and from donation checks. A burglar might have assumed that the offering would be kept in a deposit bag or in a safe to be deposited at the bank on Monday, which could be why the files and the church offices were the rooms that were the most damaged. They could have just been looking for the cash, which is why they didn't have a big bag to haul large items away. Plus, cash isn't traceable. If someone was in the middle of a burglary, they might have hidden in a room after hearing a noise, or maybe they didn't hear anything, and then Missy just surprised them in whatever they were doing. Some people have asked, if this was just supposed to be a burglary, why kill Missy? Why wouldn't they just run out another door or threaten her with their gun and leave? It's possible that the burglar took their face mask off for a minute while they were in the room with no cameras, and if Missy saw their face, they could have been worried about her identifying them and decided to kill her. Or maybe she recognized them. Also, when I think about the type of strong person that Missy was, if she didn't think they had a gun and he tried to run away, she could have thought that she could take him, or told the intruder that she was going to call the police. Maybe he tried to get away and Missy tried to stop him or need him or something, and then he attacked her out of rage. There really is no way of knowing what happened after they encountered each other. But the person's behavior in the video just doesn't seem like someone who is waiting for her to show up to carry out a planned attack. In the footage, the killer wanders around casually and doesn't look out any windows to check and see if Missy is approaching. They aren't seen looking at a watch or a clock, pacing around, waiting, or anything. If you were about to carry out a planned murder, don't you think that you would kind of be like nervously waiting, looking out the window to see if the person was coming, hiding in one spot until they came in, or maybe attacking them right away when they came through the door? This person broke a bunch of glass door panels, so how would they know that when Missy saw the glass, she wouldn't have immediately ran out of the building and called the police? Why would they wait in a room that she may not even have entered in or had a reason to go in, if their plan was to kill her all along? I also think that it's possible that the killer had planned to rob the gun store that night instead. In the footage at the gun store, there were actually 2 vehicles in the back parking lot. I'm not sure if there were actually people in the store that late or if there were just cars being parked there, but the cars could have spooked the killer who had planned on robbing that store. It kind of seems like the person in the vehicle was canvassing the gun store building and maybe turning their lights on and off to see if someone driving by would be able to see into the store. That could also be why they were wearing that police outfit, so that someone would think they were just security or they're checking everything out. Also, another thing possible, maybe they wore that gear because they were planning to rob a gun store and wanted to, ward off any gun activity fired at them. I don't know. Maybe after seeing the two cars or noticing the massive amounts of security cameras at the store, they decided to leave and rob somewhere else, like the church down the street. Despite extensive efforts, the police have still not been able to identify the killer or the car seen in the gun store footage. While a small amount of DNA was collected, police have said that it wasn't enough for a complete profile. However, it may be useful in genetic genealogy if one of the killer's family members ever does a 23andMe, Ancestry DNA, or even if they get arrested one day. The motive behind Missy's murder is still a mystery and may never be fully revealed, which continues to haunt those two small towns. Missy wasn't perfect, but she was a devoted mother and appeared committed to making her marriage with Brandon work. The loss of Missy has been devastating for her family, and I really hope that one day they can get closure about what happened to her. The reward for information leading to the killer's capture has been increased to over $100,000, and authorities are still hoping to identify the Nissan Altima driver, who may or may not be linked to the crime. It's possible that someone knows an individual who drove a Nissan, who has a limp and a similar face profile, and may own tactical or paintball gear, or even a police costume. With the continued efforts of the police and other people dedicated to solving her case, I believe that one day Missy will get justice. What do you think about this case? What do you think the motive was? And who do you think this person may be? Do you think this was planned? A robbery? Targeted? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks so much for tuning in with me today for another true crime case. I hope you appreciated the case coverage. Please don't forget to take a quick second, show your support for the channel, click that subscribe button below. It doesn't cost a thing, it's totally free. It'll just help make sure that next time you open your YouTube app on your phone or on your computer, you will see if I posted a new case video. Thank you again to Scentbird for sponsoring today's video. Make sure to use my coupon code AnnieElise for 55% off your first month. And as always, for more behind the scenes and in the moment real-time case updates, follow me over on Instagram at _AnnieElise. All right, guys, thanks so much. And until the next case, stay safe. Bye.